this lesson I'll show you the editing, the complete editing of my favorite landscape image in 2017. So I took this photo at the Cap Formentor on Majorca. So many tourists visit this place every day, so it's very crowded there. But after the sunset, when you can see really a magical light, so when it gets really red in the sky and when it's a magical moment, all of the people are leaving the Cap Formentor, or they are driving home with their cars. And I used this moment to capture the light track of these cars and combine it into my composition to use it as a kind of leading line towards the lighthouse. So I really like the curves here and the composition of it. So that was the raw file I took with my Sony A7R, and I'll show you how to make something really great out of that kind of a bit boring raw file. So it's too dark, of course, there are less colors in the sky. So we will take care of that and we'll turn out with a great image. So that's the before and that's the after. Let's start, guys. Okay, so back to Lightroom. I've already imported our 6 raw files we will need to make the final image I've showed you. So why did I choose to take more than one photo here? You see, I can show you the EXIF data, so it was at 30 of a second. And you see the cars need more than 30 seconds to drive the whole street from the lighthouse to the bottom here. So I decided to take more than one raw file to really have a continuous light track, because here in this image I have only parts of it. So I really wanted to have a complete light track of red lights, of cars which are driving right towards the lighthouse, and also a continuous white light track of cars who are leaving the lighthouse. So I took 6 images, I can show them to you. So that's image number 1. Here we have the red light track. Image number 2, a bit brighter here. Image number 3, number 4, number 6, and number 7. So we will start by doing the raw development in Lightroom. So we will choose one of these images and make something great out of that in Lightroom. So do the magic. So we will really recover the colors in the sky. We will sharpen the image and so on. And then we of course go to Photoshop and I show you how to blend these 6 images together to get one really awesome photo. So guys, let's start by going to the develop module in Lightroom. So for the raw development I take one photo which already has nearly a continuous light track. So this one here is only missing a part. So with this photo I can imagine how the final image then will look. So I decided to take this for the raw development, and then we will of course synchronize all the settings to the other raw files, and then we will edit them in Photoshop. So I start with my usual workflow as I already showed you in the last lessons. So first we make sure that enable profile corrections is switched on. Also remove chromatic aberration. Okay, so then we also click auto at a bright that the image is leveled up correctly. Okay, wonderful. And now we maybe also can start at cropping the photo, because I think the sky isn't that interesting in this image because there are no clouds. There were no clouds at this evening. And we can maybe crop it just a bit and make sure that the lighthouse is in the middle of the picture. So you can take this little thing here to make sure that the lighthouse is in the middle. So we can crop it a bit on this side, maybe something like that. Here on the bottom I think it's fine because we have some interesting foreground with these bushes here. So I will maybe leave it like that. The horizon is also straight I think, but we can make sure that it really is by using the tool here in Lightroom. Yeah, so now it's really straight. Then we just click done. So now we've already cropped our photo and the lighthouse is really in the center of the image. And now we can start with our basic retouching. So at first, as always, we will have to set the correct white balance. The camera, I think the image is much too blue. So as it was a little bit a sunset situation, so it was shot after the sunset, I think we really need warm colors here. So every time I edit a sunset image, as I told you, I go to shade, white balance shade in Lightroom, and you'll see the difference. So we take a look at the before and after. It gets much more warmer. Of course, it doesn't look really well now, but we will add more colors to the image later. And also take care of the exposure, so I think it's a bit too dark, but I always underexpose my shots a bit to really capture all the highlights, to have no parts of the image which are burned out. So maybe let's brighten up just a bit, maybe something like that. Okay, contrast is fine, I think, so we don't have to change the contrast here. And now, as always, I bring down the highlights. Maybe not so much on this image, maybe something like 90 here is fine. Okay, so now I open up the shadow, so you have never seen me doing that, guys. And then we have to set our whites, of course, our white point, so by holding the Alt key. And here it is okay if some parts of the light trail burn out, because we don't care about that. Just make sure that we have a bit of contrast in the image. So maybe something like that looks good here. And also our black point. So we go to minus, maybe not that much because it already was really dark, maybe something like minus 20. So we've brought back the contrast now and have all the details. So if we take a look at the before and after, here these bushes and also the rock here, it was really dark, so we couldn't see all the details. But now, by opening up the shadows and bringing down the highlights, we have much more details in the sky and also here in the dark tones of the image. But now it again looks a bit HDR, so we reduce the clarity. We go minus clarity as always. Maybe something like minus 17 here is fine. Okay, so that's the basic retouching. Of course, we have to take care of the colors now, so let's add a bit of vibrance here. Maybe something like that. So you see the ocean gets much more blue, the trees have more colors here also, and here. Yeah, I think this really looks fine. And also we can boost the saturation a bit. So I really like that kind of look. And now to add more color and to really recover the colors in the sky, we can always do this by the split toning and by doing local adjustments. So we go down to the split toning section of Lightroom and we'll now hold the Alt key and select a color which we like. So maybe a bit of an orange tone, something like that. Something like that looks fine. And we of course boost the saturation of this, but not too much, because otherwise it looks weird if you have too much orange also here. But you can see this also here on the stones and the rocks. It affects also these parts of the image because they are a bit bright, and this gives really a warm look to the photo as the sun would still shine on these rocks, so it just looks awesome here. Also we need to select a tone for the shadows. So again, holding the Alt key and select a tone, maybe 230 is fine. So kind of blue tone to create a bit depth. But now we have to be really watch out with the saturation to not overdo this, because it will destroy the whole look of the image. So just go a bit here, boost the exposure a bit. So if we turn on and off the split toning, you see we have a bit more color information in the sky, a bit more of blue tones here in the depths of in the dark tones, in the shadows. Just the rocks here will shine a bit warmer, so I really like that. And now let's take care of the colors in the sky. So that's really important for this image, that we bring back the colors here, because I want to communicate the message of a wonderful sunset image or after sunset image here, and yeah, it's completely missing. So we can of course now do a radial filter to bring or fake the sunset again, or to boost the sunset here in this image. So I'll do a radial all over the full width of the image here. maybe like that. Okay, and now we will add a bit of magenta. Oh, not that much. Okay, and maybe make it a bit warmer. Make always sure that feather is at 100, that it looks natural. So, maybe a bit more magenta and boost the saturation. Yeah, I kind of like that. A bit less magenta and a bit more orange maybe. Oh, that looks nice. Wonderful. Okay. And now we can do a second gradient to make more orange tones here at the right. So maybe just make sure that the exposure is set to 0 here. We don't brighten it up so much. Okay, make sure that feather is at 100. And then we add, of course, we reset the exposure. And we add a bit of orange here to this part. Yeah, not too much, so be very subtle and watch out that it looks natural. Maybe boost the saturation a bit. Okay, we can add a bit of exposure here. Maybe like that, and also here a bit more saturation and a bit exposure. I think that looks really nice. So if we take a look at the before and the after of the radial filters, so you see it really brings back the colors to the sky. It looks now that we had a wonderful sunset or after sunset situation here. So now the sky at the top is too bright, so we will have to do that what I'll do at every image. We will close the image at the top and at the bottom, of course. So let's add a gradient here and lower the exposure to really get the viewer right into your photo. Something like that, so you can make it a bit more blue at the top here. A bit more saturation, a bit darker. Something like that, I kind of like that look. Okay, maybe we can move the radial filter a bit to the top here, make it a bit higher and boost a bit the saturation. Just a bit. So always remember that the colors on mobile phones and if you post these images to social networks will get less. So sometimes you have to overdo it a bit, just a bit on your computer, because the colors just won't be as strong as on your PC then. So I've recognized this very often. So I think here in the left top corner it's still a bit too bright. So we can add a radial filter here again and lower a bit the exposure here to make it more natural. Okay, something like that is fine. Wonderful. So I kind of like that look here. And let me show you the before and after of the radial filters. So it's just amazing what you can adjust with radial filters. A really important tool in Lightroom. So boom. We've recovered the sunset, so we have now colors in the sky. And as we set the correct white balance, a warm white balance, it looks natural because also the rocks and everything here is a bit warmer. And by doing the split toning, we have also warm tones now in the shadows and in the highlights here at the stones. So it just looks natural, I think. And if we take a look at the before and after, wow. Wow, with these simple steps, by just doing the basic retouchment with the highlight, shadows, whites, blacks, minus clarity, vibrance, saturation as always, then doing the split toning and local adjustments by adding color, by adding saturation, by adding a bit of exposure, by closing the photo, we just get an awesome image look. And you can do this in 10 minutes. Yeah, if you have really routine to this workflow, after this video, because just practice with the raw files I give you and you will have a routine, and then you can edit all your raw files in a few minutes and have great images. I promise you, I promise you. So maybe we can brighten up the... Oh, let's first close the photo on the bottom a bit, just a bit. Let's take a look if that looks nice. If we make a gradient here. So sometimes it doesn't make sense to do this, but I always like to do that a bit, just a bit here. Okay, wonderful. So it gives more depth to the photo again. And maybe let's take a look if we can add a little vignette. Maybe not so much, just a bit brighter. Okay, so we go to the effects section in Lightroom. Here. And maybe just do a little post-crop vignette. Something like that. Okay, I kind of like that. So, it's a bit too strong, the gradient here at the bottom, so we don't want to be too dark here. And now, as we've closed up the photo, we still have to complexify the light. So we can, of course, do this with local adjustment brush. So, which parts of the image are really interesting? I think, of course, the light trail here, but the light trail already is really bright, so we don't have to brighten it up here, because it really the viewer just looks at it at his first glance, because it's the brightest part of the picture, the lights here, and also the light of the lighthouse. But I think this tree here on the right is also interesting. The viewer maybe at his second glance then should look on this tree. So we brighten this tree a bit up. I really like the tree here, this bush. It's really interesting. It just has a fuzzy kind of look. So I brighten it up all the way. Something like that. So it looks really nice. And we can also brighten up this just a bit. These brushes here just a bit, so maybe not that much. If you hold the Alt key, you can erase a bit more. Okay, so I think this kind of looks nice. And now we can also complexify the light by using radial filters again. So for example, I think this rock here is really really looking interesting, so we can brighten it up just a bit by dragging a radial right onto the rock here. Just make it a bit brighter and make sure feather is at 100 so that it looks natural. So let's take a look at the before and after of the radials. Yeah, and it also adds a bit of dynamics to the image. I like that. Okay. And maybe here also we can duplicate this radial filter and drag it over here to just make some points of light and complexify the light situation more. So there's no right or wrong. Also we maybe can brighten up the lighthouse, of course. So let's duplicate the radial filter again and drag it onto the lighthouse, because the lighthouse really is the important part of the image. Just brighten it up a bit. And maybe here we can also add a bit of clarity to strengthen the contrast of the star. Okay, just looks nice. So let's take the brush again and maybe just brush a bit over these stones here. Brighten them up a bit to make the light more complicated and more interesting. The whole light situation. Yeah, maybe here also we can brush a bit. Okay. Maybe not that much. Okay, wonderful. And here it also just, it looks like the sun was shining onto this rock here, so I kind of like that. Okay, so that's looking nice. Done. If you're done, just click done. And of course, as always, take a look at other things and then come back to your image and see if you still like what you did here. So I kind of like that. And now here, before I took the image, here was a boat which made a nice wave. So I'd like to also highlight this wave a bit, because I think it adds more dynamics to the image, because we have already curves here into our composition. And then we would have a curve here on the water again. So I think this is really interesting for our image. So let's take the brush again. On the brush, Make it a bit smaller, of course. Just like that. Boost the exposure a bit. And now just paint over this wave. So something like that. Okay, that's kind of nice. And then, of course, not too much, so that the viewer doesn't recognize that you brushed this in. Then zoom out a bit. Okay, that's a bit too strong, so we will lower the exposure just a tiny bit, maybe like that. Then we just click done. And boom. So here is a bit still the light of the board, but we will take care of that if we are in Photoshop. So of course you can use the spot removal tool here in Lightroom, but as I already told you in the basics lesson, it doesn't work really well in Lightroom. So I don't like this tool. I really go to Photoshop to remove such things. And yeah, so I can show you the before and after now. So it's just amazing how we complexified the light, how we added more dynamics to the image, how we added color to the image. And now it has a complete different look and it's just looking amazing. So the last thing we have to do in Lightroom is take care of the sharpening. So let's go to details section in Lightroom and set the right amount for sharpening. So as we then in Photoshop of course use the high pass filter as always, we can still do some basic sharpening here in Lightroom. So I maybe go to 50 or something like 60. And now do a little mask, of course, because I don't want the sky to be sharpened here, that we don't add noise to this. So only the parts which are white now get sharpened. So I don't want I only want the borders to be sharp here. So maybe I take a value of 60 here also. So now the corners, the borders get sharpened. And maybe as we open up the shadows that much, let's take a look. Take some time until the Lightroom loads the raw file, because it's also very big, the raw file of the Sony A7. It has more than 40 megabytes. So maybe we can do a bit of noise reduction, just a bit, and maybe boost the sharpening just a bit more to around 70. Okay, so with the screen recording, Lightroom is always a bit slow, but I think that's no problem. Okay, so now it's much more sharp. We can also correct the color noise, so the color cast here to go around 40. And I think then we're done in Lightroom with the raw developing. So now we have to copy or to synchronize all the things. Just one correction, I think it looks kind of weird here in the lighthouse, it's a bit too bright. Okay, so now it looks more natural. We can just copy all the settings we've done, everything, the cropping, the colors, the local adjustments, everything to the other raw files, that these have nearly the same look, and then we can blend them together in Photoshop. So to do this, we make a right click onto the photo we've just edited and go to develop settings and copy settings. Then a pop-up opens and we select all, make sure that check all is enabled. Then click copy. And now we will select all the other files, all the other raw files here at the bottom. And then we make a right click on them, go to develop settings and paste settings. So it takes some time. And then you'll see how all these settings are applied to the other raw files. Boom, boom. So now these are also edited. Okay, so now we want to open these raw files as layers in Photoshop. So we make sure that all these 6 raw files are selected. Then we make a right click on it, go to edit, and then open as layers in Photoshop. And we click that, and now it of course takes a bit of time because these raw files all are very big. You will just wait a few seconds. Okay guys, so I imported all the files from Lightroom to Photoshop. So we have our 6 layers from Lightroom now. I can show them to you. So number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 and number 6. And of course there is a bit a difference of the brightness of these single shots. So that's because I had an exposure time of 30 seconds. And between these single shots, of course, the line changes a bit. It got darker here, but that doesn't matter because we only need the light track of these single raw files. And what we also see if we go through these layers here, that they aren't directly above each other. So we can fix this with Photoshop. Photoshop has a great function which is called auto align layers, and it directly then places all the layers on top of each other, that they are directly above each other. So for doing this, we select all the layers here, and then we go to edit and click auto align layers, and then go to auto and click OK. It now takes some time for Photoshop, of course. Okay, so now if we hide again all these layers, you see that they now are correctly lined up. They are directly above each other. Now we have a little transparent thing here on some of the single layers, but that doesn't matter at all. We will crop the image then at the end. So let's blend them together. Here in our first exposure, we already had a big part of the light track. So that was also the exposure we edited in Lightroom, our basic exposure. And now I just want this part here to blend in onto this layer. So to do that, we first, of course, make the layer visible. Then we go to blending mode and select lighten. So what you see now, Photoshop lightens up the layer, and it we have the light track now blended into our first layer. But to make sure that Photoshop doesn't affect the other parts of the image, because it will of course decrease the image quality. And if you we have also a bit the difference between the brightness of these single exposures. We have to make sure that we only blend in the light track, because at the blending mode lighten, also the other parts will get lightened and over blended. So to make sure that only the light track is blended in here, we will create a new layer mask by clicking the new mask icon here at the bottom. Then we select our brush, then change the foreground color to white, of course. Click Command and Delete. And now we can just brush in the part of the image we want to get over blended. So it's here the light track in the top. So let me show that to you. Just brush it in. Like this. And boom. Okay, let's take a look if this fits here. I think this looks quite natural, something like that. So kind of like that. Wonderful. So now we've already blended in the first layer. So we changed the blending mode to lighten, and then only brushed in the parts of the image we want to be blended in. So before and after. Wonderful. So now let's do this with the next layer, of course. So here we need the backlights of the cars here in the top. So let's also go to lighten. Now create a new mask. Select our brush, click Command and Delete. And now we just have to brush in the parts of the image we want to. So wonderful. And you see it gets a bit brighter because the single raw file was just brighter than the original raw file we edited in Lightroom. So we just make sure that we only brush in the parts we want to. So here we don't need the thing here. Okay, so like that, before and after. So we blended in the backlights here at the top and also in this curve here. Wonderful. So the light track gets more continuous with every blending we do. Number 4. Okay, so we can use, of course, the red lights here and here the lights, I think here also, but we won't blend in these lights here of that car because I think that's just distracting from the light of the lighthouse, so it would ruin our whole composition, and so I won't brush this in. So we also go to lighten, create a mask, make sure our color is set to white, delete, command delete, make the mask black, and now we brush in the parts we want. Okay, also here. Wonderful. Okay, so before and after with this layer. Awesome. And now we need to have some red lights also here in the bottom. So again, as with the last layers, we go to lighten, create our mask, and brush it in. So you see it looks awesome. Wonderful. So make sure that it's not too bright here. Okay. Let me change a bit the size of the brush, that we can brush it in more accurate. Okay. So I like that before and after. And now we have still the last exposure. So it's a nice color here at the mountain, also here, and still a bit more of the red lights at the bottom. So go to lighten, the mask, brush it in. Here were some lights. Also I think here were some lights. Wonderful. So it's looking really nice now. Boom. So if we make now a group of these and take a look, this was our single exposure from Lightroom, which we edited, so where we did the raw development. Now we only blended in the parts of the light track, so that now we have a continuous light track. So and it adds a lot more dynamics to the image, and it looks much better, I think, than the part only of the light track. And we didn't affect our basic image here because we only created the layer mask and only brushed in the parts we wanted to. So we have still a good quality and everything sharp. And now we have to take care a bit of these transparent things here. So first of all, let's make a new layer with all the layers combined that we can work on. So to do this, you click Command, Alt, Shift and E, and Photoshop creates a new layer out of all the visible layers. Okay, so maybe let's delete the group to make it a bit faster, that Photoshop is a bit faster now at the screen recording. So it's destructive working now, but no problem because we are confident with our work here. So let's make sure that we crop this out here. You have really to zoom in. Okay. Also at the top. I think at the top it's fine. And at the bottom, yeah, we can just crop out a bit. The bottom and the left, it's fine, I think. Okay. Here we have a little transparent thing at the top and at the left too. So we have to take care of that as well. Just a tiny bit. So it's really difficult to only crop a bit of the photo here in Photoshop. Okay, then we just click OK and Photoshop crops our photo. Then we zoom out and boom, it's looking amazing. So before and after, it's just awesome what we can do with these simple blending steps. So we have still one issue in the problem. Here the lights of the boat. I already told you in Lightroom we wanted to remove that in Photoshop. So now's the time to do this. Let's take the spot healing brush tool and just brush over it. So in 90% of the cases it works really well. Wonderful. And boom, it's fixed, it's away. Before, after, amazing. It's an amazing tool, it works just awesome. And yeah, I think everything looks fine. So we have a little hot pixel here. No problem, we can also remove it with this tool. Awesome, boom, click, it's removed. And let's do the final sharpening. So we just duplicate the layer by dragging it onto the new layer icon. And then we go to Filter, Other, Hypers, and select, of course, as always, the value of 3.0 pixels. Then we click OK. We go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. And we drag the saturation to -100. And then we click OK. And now all we have to do is to change the blending mode to overlay. And boom, it's sharpened. So if we zoom in, you see the difference. It's just amazing what the high-pass filter does. Before and after, look just at these rocks. It adds so much details to the image. It's just wonderful. Boom. It's so sharp. It is an amazing quality, so you can make a huge print out of that, of course. It's a wonderful quality with the Sony A7R, with these big RAW files, and with the Zeiss lens. It's really sharp, and also with the basic sharpening of Lightroom and then the high-pass filter in combination, it works really well. So all we have to do now is just to export the photo. I've already showed you this in lesson 1, I think, in part 1. So just go to File, Export, and Save for Web Legacy, and then select the maximum quality and so on, just like you want it, and then save your final JPEG image, and then you are done with the complete editing of this image. So if you liked this video and want to see more about editing landscape photos, I really can recommend my complete video training to you, because there I will edit 6 different pictures with you together and show you everything you need to know about Lightroom and editing landscape photos in Lightroom. So let me show you some of the before and after images we will edit together. So of course some sunset images like you can see here, shooting right into the sun. And we really try to get all the colors back we lost when we shot this RAW file. For example here, it's a dramatic change, and it's just awesome to see what you can achieve with simple and easy methods in Lightroom. So this before, and this is the after. Also we will edit a night photo, and I will show you a special effect in Photoshop to increase the dynamics of a photo. I think you also know these situations when you move to a photography trip and you just have bad weather, no good light, no colors in the sky, and I'll show you how to get these colors back and how to still achieve a great photo out of boring looking RAW files. So that's the before and that's the after, and you can still print this image. I printed this image on a canvas and I sold already this image, and yeah, just out of this boring raw file and this boring photo. And we will also talk about autumn photos, because there it's important to let the colors look natural, but to still make them pop, that they get attention in social media, for example, and that your images just look awesome. And I will show you different techniques you can use in Lightroom that are really important for autumn photos, for example. Yeah, and of course also my most successful photo in 2017, the Cup Formentor photo I showed you in this video. We will edit together also in the video training. Of course, I will also show you all the basic functions of Lightroom, all the sliders. I will explain to you for what they are and what you can achieve with these different functions. So I offer this video training on Udemy. It's the one of the biggest learning platforms in the world. And my video course is a bestseller and the best-selling course on Udemy, and almost 6,000 students have already enrolled. So you can also just browse on this website. Just click the link in the description below. I will give you a special offer, a sale for just $9.99 or euro, depending on the region you are living in. Instead of $179. It's a huge sale, and it's just for you by clicking this link in the video description. You can also take a look on the reviews, what other people think about the course, but I can tell you that most of the people are really love this course, and that they really learned something to improve their photos, and many of them sent me photos every day, and also before and after comparisons, what they achieved with my workflow in Lightroom. So to sum it up, it's a 3.5 hours best-selling video training for only $9.99, and it's just for you this day. You saw the before and after comparisons of the images we edit together, the 6 complete editings, and also I show you all the basics of Lightroom. And it's just for you, and you can start learning Lightroom now by clicking the link in the description. I'm happy to see you inside the course, and bye bye.